There are people who have been scolded all their lives for the same thing. At 7, sit still and pay attention. At 15, you have so much potential, but you're lazy. At 25, you're intelligent, but unreliable. At 35, would you get organized for once like everyone else? For ages, one sermon. And in the end, the person begins delivering that sermon to themselves, silently, every evening. What is wrong with me? Today's episode is for that person. And I bring, from the very start, news that for many arrives as a late liberation. It may be that all these years, you were being scolded not for a flaw of character, but for the way your brain is built. Not laziness, not ill will, not unreliability. A neurodevelopmental condition with a name, a known mechanism, and, mark this, some of the most effective treatments in all of modern psychiatry. Today we talk about ADHD in adults, about the millions of grown people living with it unknowingly, and about what changes, sometimes everything, from the day they find out. I'll call her Helen. She is 38 and a translator, a very good one. Everyone who works with her agrees. Intelligent, cultivated, quick to laugh. And yet Helen's life has been, on the inside, an exhausting battle no one ever saw. 10 projects begun in a blaze of enthusiasm, 2 carried to the end. Deadlines met only in the panic of the final night, as though fear alone knew how to start her engine. Bills unpaid. Not for lack of money, but because the envelope sank into a pile, and the pile sank into oblivion. Keys hunted daily. Messages read. I'll reply right away and buried. And over it all, a tiredness she could not explain. The tiredness of appearing to be an organized person. Because Helen compensated. Lists upon lists, alarms, nights of catching up. At school she had been the bright girl who doesn't apply herself. At home, head in the clouds. Her mornings began with a promise. Today I get organized, and ended with a verdict, the same one for 30 years. I am lazy and chaotic. She said it without pain by now, the way one states a date of birth. It had become identity. A year ago, her 9-year-old son was assessed at the school's recommendation. The diagnosis, attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder. Helen was given the questionnaires to complete at home, dozens of questions about her child. And filling them in, evening after evening, she felt a chill spread through her. She was not reading about her son. She was reading about herself. Line after line, question after question. Her childhood, her school years, her entire life, described with a precision no one had ever had. 3 months later, at 38, Helen received her own diagnosis. And her first reaction was not sadness. It was a question, spoken softly, eyes glistening. So I wasn't lazy? Not ever. What, then, is ADHD? The full name: Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And the first thing I want you to place carefully: it is not a personality disorder like the ones we have discussed in recent episodes. It is a neurodevelopmental condition. The difference changes everything. Personality is woven over years, from temperament and wounds. ADHD is not acquired. You are born with it. It is the way the brain was built, present from childhood, with one of the strongest hereditary components in all of psychiatry. Which is why, so often, a parent discovers their own diagnosis in the mirror of their child's, exactly like Helen. No one is to blame. There was no wrong childhood. There is an architecture. And that architecture is most beautifully described in an image from one of the field's great researchers, Thomas Brown. Imagine an orchestra in which every musician is superb. Magnificent violins, the intelligence. Gleaming brass, the creativity. Enviable percussion, the energy. One problem only: the conductor is not doing his job. He gives no cues, keeps no tempo, never decides who plays now and who waits. The instruments are wonderful, but the concert is chaos. That conductor bears, in clinical language, the name of executive functions. the brain's capacity to start a task on time, to plan it, to remember what it was doing, to resist an impulse, to feel time passing. In ADHD, it is not the instruments that are missing. It is the baton. Hence the two faces of the condition. Inattention. Not the absence of attention, but the impossibility of steering it by mere will. Missed details, things begun and abandoned, objects lost, the daily round forgotten. And hyperactivity with impulsivity. Visible to the naked eye in the child racing around the classroom, but in the adult it moves indoors. A permanent restlessness, a revving engine that will not idle even at night, talking over others, decisions taken ahead of thought. Many adults do not look hyperactive precisely because the storm moved under the skin long ago. And there is one more paradox, the one that confuses everyone. Hyperfocus. The same Helen who cannot read 2 pages of a contract can translate for 6 hours without lifting her head, when the text sets her alight. See, you can when you want to, she was told all her life. Only it was never about wanting. Attention in ADHD is not distributed by will, but by interest, novelty, and urgency. It is not a weak attention. It is an unruly one. An orchestra that refuses the dull score, and plays divinely when the piece catches fire. Around this condition a mountain of myths is gathered, and every one of them keeps real people away from a diagnosis that could change their lives. Let me take the most damaging in turn. First, ADHD is a children's thing, adults don't have it. False. The science today is clear. Up to 7 in 10 children with ADHD carry symptoms that seriously hinder them into adulthood. The condition does not vanish at 18. At most it changes its clothes. The racing about becomes inner restlessness, and the school report becomes a pile of unpaid bills. Millions of adults across the world are living with it now, most without knowing. The second myth, delivered with an understanding smile. Oh, we all have a little ADHD. Who doesn't lose their keys? It sounds kind, and it is deeply unfair. Yes, we all lose keys, and we all procrastinate. The difference is not of kind, but of measure and of price. In ADHD, these difficulties are permanent, lifelong, present in every area of living, and they leave deep marks. Careers below one's gifts, weary relationships, a self-esteem ground down fine, day after day. Telling a person with ADHD, we're all like that, is like telling a person with a broken leg that walking tires us all. The third, the cruelest. It's laziness. It's weak will. Here the answer is simple and final. Laziness does not exist in the diagnostic manuals. But this condition does, with its brain mechanisms described, its circuit studied, its heritability documented. The person with ADHD does not make less effort than others. Most of the time they make more for smaller results. It is as if they pedaled through sand all day and were scolded, come evening, for not having gone far. And the fourth myth, the new one. ADHD is an internet fashion. Everyone self-diagnoses now. Here I owe you complete honesty, because the kernel of truth exists and I will not hide it. Yes, recent years have brought hasty labeling, self-diagnosis from 30-second clips, and confusion between the digital exhaustion of our age and a neurodevelopmental condition. Both things are true at once. Adult ADHD was massively underdiagnosed for decades. And in parallel, not every lapse of attention is ADHD. The conclusion is not it doesn't exist, but one thing only which I repeat with all seriousness. A diagnosis is not made by hearsay, by feel, or by phone. It is made by a specialist, through a thorough assessment that examines the story of a whole life, not merely the mood of today. If adult ADHD is, in general, an unseen condition, in women it is very nearly invisible. Women make up half of those living with it. Yet for decades they were diagnosed incomparably more rarely. And the reasons deserve to be said plainly, because behind them stand whole lives lived under the wrong label. The first reason. In girls and women the inattentive form predominates, the one without visible hyperactivity. The boy who races around the classroom and knocks over his chair is sent promptly for assessment because he disturbs. The quiet girl at her desk, traveling through the clouds of her own mind, disturbs no one, so no one asks any questions. Instead of help, she receives a character sketch. Dreamy, scattered, could do better. The system detects noise. Her suffering was quiet. The second reason, masking. Girls are raised, more insistently than boys, to be tidy, attentive, agreeable. So the girl with ADHD learns early to compensate hard. Lists, sleepless nights, checking and rechecking, an enormous invisible labor of appearing together. The compensation works. At a price. The price is called exhaustion. And when the exhaustion overflows, somewhere around 30 or 40, in the form of anxiety or depression, doctors treat exactly that, the anxiety and the depression. For years, sometimes. Without anyone asking what keeps feeding them from below. And there's one more layer, which research has only recently begun to take seriously. Hormones. Many women's symptoms worsen premenstrually, after childbirth, and in perimenopause. This brain is sensitive to hormonal tides, and a woman's life is full of them. Add it all together. The quiet form, the masking, the exhaustion labeled as something else, the hormonal tides, and you understand why the most common pattern of female diagnosis looks exactly like Helen's story. A woman of 35 to 45, who learns about herself only when she learns about her child. A generation of women is discovering its own brain in the mirror of its children. Too late for the years already gone. Not remotely too late for all the years to come. And now the good part. And with this condition, the good part is unusually good. Because of all the kinds of suffering we have discussed in this series, ADHD has some of the most effective treatments in the whole of modern psychiatry. Not a cure, the brain's architecture is not rewritten, but a life in which the conductor finally receives help. That, yes, is possible. The first step, without which nothing else stands. An assessment by a specialist, a psychiatrist, the only one who can make this diagnosis in an adult. A serious assessment does not take 10 minutes and is not done with an internet quiz. It reconstructs the story of an entire life, because this condition, by definition, begins in childhood. And it is the same assessment that distinguishes ADHD from what can imitate it. A depression, an anxiety, ruined sleep, or from what has, very often, grown over it like ivy on a wall. Then, treatment. And here I speak conceptually, because the concrete decisions belong to your doctor, not to a video. Medication for this condition exists, and one thing deserves to be said about it, because few people know it. In terms of effect size, it is among the most effective treatments in all of psychiatry. Many patients describe their first weeks of the right treatment with the same image. It went quiet in my head, for the first time in my life. Alongside medication, psychoeducation, the simple understanding of one's own brain, which for many is a therapy in itself, and psychotherapy adapted to this condition, which does not repair attention but builds systems this attention can live well with. And those systems follow a logic you can begin today, our metaphor included. If the inner conductor falters, you hire an outer one. The calendar that remembers in your place. The alarm that feels time in your place. The list that does not forget. The great task cut into small slices. For this orchestra will not start at the side of a mountain, but plays beautifully bar by bar. One place, always the same, for keys and papers. Working alongside another person, even in silence, another human presence starts the engine, mysteriously. Guarded sleep and daily movement. For this brain, exercise is documented medicine, not a platitude. And one thing more, to be fair to the end. This brain comes, in many with gifts, energy, spontaneity, a creativity that leaps the fences careful thinking walks around, a hyperfocus that moves mountains when well aimed. I do not romanticize. Untreated, ADHD costs dearly, but understood and treated, it stops being a sentence and becomes simply a way of functioning. With the instructions, at long last, read. And now a few words for you alone. For the one who, somewhere along this episode, felt a strange recognition, perhaps uncomfortable, perhaps with glistening eyes, like Helen over the questionnaires. The first thing. If this story is also your story, then I want you to hear clearly the sentence someone should have said to you 20 or 30 years ago. You are not lazy. You never were. You have pedaled through sand your whole life, while those on the pavement wondered why you couldn't keep up. Your effort was real. Your tiredness was real. Only the sand, no one saw it. Not even you. The second thing. It is all right to feel grief as well. Many adults diagnosed late pass through a true mourning, for the school years scolded in vain, for the chances lost, for the person they might have been had someone understood in time. That mourning is legitimate and deserves to be lived, not hurried. But at the end of it something precious waits. For the first time, a life story that finally makes sense. All the oddities, all the whys, they settle into place. You were not broken. You were undeciphered. The third thing, the practical one. If the recognition is serious, not in one detail, but in the whole weave, do not stay alone with the question. Take it to a specialist, a psychiatrist for assessment and diagnosis, a psychologist or psychotherapist for the road after. Do not diagnose yourself from your phone, in either direction. Neither I surely have it, nor I surely don't. Your question deserves a true answer, given by someone trained to give it. How to find such a specialist, I have written in the description below this video. Helen, the one in our story, is a construction. But the 38-year-old woman weeping quietly over her child's questionnaires, recognizing herself in every line, exists in her thousands. And so does the man who learned at 40 that his unreliability had a name. If you are one of them, I wish for you what I would wish for Helen. Not a life without an orchestra. Your orchestra is magnificent. Only a conductor helped, at long last, to raise the baton. See you in the next episode.